So a lot can happen in a year. It was 1 year ago that I stood before you and told you about some of the new things that we added to the plugin system, some of the new components in the platform. Although I do remember being slightly less hungover at the time. So that's what we do in integration. That's what I do. I work on cross-product plugins, and I work on the infrastructure to make it easier to develop cross-product plugins. That's my day job. But I consider myself somewhat of a hacker. I like to tweak. I always like to try out new ideas, and so I have side projects. I ended my talk last year telling you about 3 side projects that I had going. So the first one, no XML plugins. This was about a way to configure your plugin with no XML, just Java code. It didn't go anywhere. The second one, the fast dev plugin. You've already heard yesterday how this idea that you can skip the plugin gets reloaded for you automatically. San Francisco took this idea, turned it into an amazing plugin, which is now part of the SDK. So that's awesome. The third one, Speakeasy. Speakeasy, as you've heard as well, is a quick way to write an extension to our products and share that extension with other people, so per user plugins. This idea was so popular internally that I was asked, hey, could you turn this into a real project? I'm thinking, well, I have a day job, but okay, fine, I'll do this as well. And this is kind of how this whole situation reminds me. And we have this problem with plugins all the time. This is one of my favorite Dilbert cartoons. I'm sure you've probably all seen it. I love that middle panel. When asked to do more work, he says, no problem. I have infinite capacity to do more work as long as you don't mind that the quality approaches 0. But you know, that's the beauty of plugins, right? You actually can sit down for a couple hours, get something useful, deploy it to the company, and go back to your day job. And so that's what I did. Months ago, I started working on Speakeasy about 1 day a week. Still had to do the normal stuff, but I had to deliver features constantly. And as part of this, since I didn't have a lot of time, I had to be as fast developing as I possibly could without sacrificing that quality. And so I wanted to share some of those tips. I've learned a few things over the last 9 months, and I wanted to share some of those tips with you. 5 strategies that I found useful to accelerate your plugin development. Strategy number 1, discover your plugin with Speakeasy. How many of you know what this is? Come on, speak up. Someone's got to know what this is. It's what? A difference engine. No, good guess though. Anyone else? A recording device? Close. Anyone? A what now? Yeah, punch code machine. Close. This is actually automatic vote recording machine developed by Thomas Edison. It was his first patented invention. He saw how Congress operated. He saw how they voted on a bill. How it worked is every congressman would stand up, say yay or nay, and then go sit back down. So hundreds of people doing this, he said, that is so inefficient. They could be so much faster. I could automate that. Like any good engineer, I could automate that for you. So that's what he did. He went back into his laboratory, worked, tried all this cool stuff, came out with this brand new fancy invention. You can just imagine him beaming as he hands it to a chairman of a subcommittee, saying, this is just going to change your life. The committee chairman looked at that and said, if there is any invention I do not want, it is that. As it turned out, the lengthy voting process actually played a critical role in how votes came to be. Because that verbally standing up and saying yea or nay, that gave him a chance to filibuster. The lengthy process gave you a chance to convince your colleague, hey, come on, seriously, vote this way, vote that way, whatever. So making that time shorter was exact opposite of what they needed. So Thomas Edison learned a very valuable lesson this day. He learned to validate his assumptions. To not just go into something saying, oh, I know best, this is going to be awesome, and just do it. Find out, make sure that the assumptions you're making, the value that you think you're going to provide, is actually correct. And this applies to plugins as well. The number one problem of plugin development is not building a plugin poorly, it's building the wrong plugin. Plugin development is fast, but it still takes time. So be less concerned about what APIs you're using, what design patterns, what libraries you're using, and be more focused on, at least initially, making sure you're building something that is going to be useful. Let me give you an example. I had this idea for inline commenting plugin. This is something, if any of you use Confluence, I think most everyone's used Confluence? Yes? Okay, there's a lot of hands-ish. Great, awesome. Most people use Confluence. And commenting, obviously, is a big part of Confluence. So I thought, you know what, instead of just writing a general comment at the bottom, what if I could select text and comment just on that line? And then when people come in later, maybe there'd be a little number there to indicate, hey, 3 people have commented on this sentence or on this bullet point, and then they could click to find out more. Now, instead of just jumping in and building that plugin, I could learn from Edison and validate my assumption. So here's some assumptions I'm making. First, that people actually want to comment on specific lines. So without writing a single line of code, I could test this assumption. I could look at the last 100 comments and see, are people just making general comments, or are they actually trying to quote stuff and reply to very specific bits? If I see a lot of specific replies, my assumption is validated. If I see a lot of just general +1 or that idea is crap, well then I probably shouldn't be wasting my time. And then as you go through this exercise, you can think of other assumptions. So for example, it's too slow to comment, or people want to see the number of comments. And again, just by talking with people or looking at the data that exists out there, I can validate my assumptions, saving myself hours, days, weeks, building a plugin nobody wants. So the lesson for you, so this is how plugin development really should work. It's really about a funnel. So at the top you have ideas. You have all these things that you always wanted to do that you think are going to change the world. Bottom, you have building a plugin. Shit takes time, even though it's pretty fast. What you want to do is you want to find ways to filter all these ideas so that you don't waste a lot of time building a plugin. It starts with validation, where you make sure that this idea is useful. Talk to people. Don't just have this little secret in your head that's going to be awesome, and I won't tell anyone because I don't want to ruin the surprise. No. Most likely the idea is not awesome, and it's boring, and it's going to waste everyone's time. Talk to people, validate it, and then you go to stage 2. You build a prototype. You don't want to be that guy who has a lot of ideas, tells everyone, oh, you all should do this, but doesn't do anything. You want to build something. So prototypes are an awesome way to quickly validate your idea by having something that you can use, touch, and feel, and share with other people. Now, I'm not going to get into how to build a Speakeasy extension. There's actually a talk coming later that will go into all that detail. But suffice it to say, Speakeasy makes prototype building very quick, easy. Finally, if that's successful, then you go on and build the awesome plugin that you know is going to change the world. So the lesson for you is, I challenge you to think about a recent plugin idea, one of those ideas that you thought was just going to be amazing, and examine that idea and say, what assumptions am I making? And think of how you could validate those assumptions without writing a single line of code. Strategy number 2. Define interactions with page objects. This is all about functional testing. Now, functional testing is a way that you can automate the testing of the functionality of your plugin, so that later on, when you add more and more features, you have confidence that the old features still work. It's a very valuable technique. Usually how people do it is they write Selenium. So with Selenium, you write a test that drives a real browser to click and move the mouse and type into fields, all that sort of thing. And then you test the results. You can run different browsers. You can verify that your feature works in IE, Firefox, all the different versions. Very, very powerful tool, which I'm sure all of you are using. How many actually write Selenium tests for the plugin? 1, 2, because sadly I can count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people out of 100 of some of the top developers, of course, in the country and the world, international people, Australia. So we don't write it. And seriously, that's what it's like. Functional testing is like dieting. It's always one of those things that you're like, okay, dude, seriously, this project is way behind schedule. I got to get this out. So I'm not going to write any today. But the next project, dude, I'm going to start that one right. It's going to functional test. It's going to be awesome. Yes, I've been there. One of the reasons I think that is because Selenium, for those of you, just who's done Selenium, period? A lot of people? Okay, about half the people. Selenium is a freaking pain in the ass, honestly. It's always one of those things, you see the demos, you're like, oh, just a little bit of code, it's awesome. And then once you start writing it, it just piles up and piles up. This is an example of a Selenium test from one of our projects, AppLinks. Now, we're currently in the process of rewriting it, so this has been rewritten, thankfully. This is just a tiny little snippet of, I think there's about 8 more of these sections for a single test. This is why Selenium is a pain, because so many concerns are all jumbled up in each other. So you have driving of the browser, the doing the clicks, the moving the mouse. You have extracting information with complicated freaking XPath expressions. This stuff down here, horrible, fragile. And then you have your assertions, the whole point of doing your test. So as you do real-world stuff, your test grows and grows and has so much code, you don't know what's going on. That makes it unmaintainable. That makes it brittle. People come later, don't have any idea what's going on. Thankfully, this person at least added comments, so we have some clue of what's supposed to be happening. Kind of reminds you of this, doesn't it? The old JSP days. JSP, ASP, PHP, whatever it was. The days where Perl, perhaps, where you wrote your entire application in one file. You had business logic, you had validation logic, you had SQL queries, you had, of course, your HTML, your validation, everything all in one gigantic file. Awesome way to get started. You know, I remember I started ASP actually this way. Just kind of type a little thing, hey, you're done. But very quickly that just grows unmaintainable and horrible. So we've learned from this. We've learned how to solve this problem with a better abstraction. So just like we solved the JSP problem by using something like a data access object, where we take all that SQL code and all those queries and updates and put them behind an abstraction called a data access layer. You'd probably call it something different, but the concept's the same. Similarly, we can take our Selenium code and improve it by putting it behind, by better organizing it and separating those concerns. What you do is you take all the interactions with the browser and you put them into page objects. So what page objects are is objects that model your application. And they hide all the Selenium details, leaving your test to focus on what it should be doing, defining interactions and assertions. So I've found that if you use this abstraction, these page objects, not only will you be able to write tests faster and better, so hopefully you have a chance of doing it in the first place, but instead I found that you can take it to the next step. Take page objects, functional testing, where you've never taken functional testing before, write the functional test first. Now it sounds crazy, and it is a bit crazy, but it's not a theory. This is something I've actually been doing the last 9 months. Speakeasy. Okay, so not every feature, but many features. Whoa. Interesting. I don't use Windows much, but Linux, I found out yesterday it doesn't work with the projector. Sorry. Anyways, this is a functional test in Speakeasy. Instead of all this code where it's clicking and pulling out XPath expressions, all that stuff, it's all gone. So my functional test is really 2 parts. The first part, I'm defining my interactions, what should be happening using page objects. The second part is I'm pulling the data out and doing the assertions. It's very clean. It's very easy to see what's going on here. So, and actually quite a lot is going on, because what I'm doing is I'm going to Speakeasy, I'm opening up an extension, a new extension dialog, I'm filling in the fields, submitting that, opening up the web IDE, changing some stuff, submitting that, enabling the plugin, all that with a nice fluent interface that's very readable, and just at a glance you can kind of see exactly what that test is supposed to do. So easy that you can, as I said, write your functional test before you write your feature to help you design and kind of work that process, what the interactions are going to be like out in your head before you start writing a lot of JavaScript and back-end code. Now, page object is just a pattern. It's an idea, an abstraction. But we're taking it to the next level. We are starting in our products to ship page objects with our products. So, for example, in JIRA 5.0, they're starting to create a library of page objects, not only for their own testing, something that us plugin developers can use to help with testing. And it does 2 things. First, these libraries contain a lot of common pages. For example, login page, admin page, headers. All those abstractions, all those page objects are already created. You don't have to create them yourself, which, by the way, is huge. The second thing is these libraries take care of a lot of the setup for you. So if you want to use this technology in your plugin, you added POM dependency, and you write code like this. Done. You don't have to add in reams of Maven XML. You don't have to install certain things in your browser, in your file system, set up paths. It takes care of everything for you. In fact, if I ran this test, which is going to fail because poor little laptop cannot take the awesomeness that is JIRA 5 and PowerPoint and everything all at the same time. But if I ran it, what's going to happen is the page object library is going to install Firefox for me, for my operating system, bring it up with nice development tools and everything, and run the test. I don't have to worry about, again, any of the setup. And so this abstraction, particularly the fact that JIRA is providing it, is so useful, because if you think about it, you know that JIRA is going to change. And who better to know what changes JIRA is going to have than the JIRA developers? Did it come up yet? Hey, it came up, and then it dies because the server's not up. But again, notice this is a brand new instance of Firefox. I don't even have this installed on my computer. It took care of everything for me. So if you want more information, there's going to be a link in the end of my presentation, so you can go check it out. And we'll do that. Oh, do you remember how to go back to it? It's this, isn't it? Yay. So the good news is this is not just JIRA. This is starting JIRA 4.4, has some JIRA 5.0. Confluence is starting to develop these page object libraries. Bamboo is starting. Fisheye, we're still convincing them, but they're getting closer. This will hopefully save you a lot of time in making writing the tests for your plugin much easier. So my challenge for you, give it a go. And this time, seriously, do it. Not tomorrow, today. Check out this documentation. It's really easy to write your first functional test. Just see what it's like. Maybe you throw it away and you still find it's way too complicated. That's fine, but at least give it a try. And hopefully you'll find, as me, that you actually save time by writing these tests first. Strategy number 3. Optimize your development loop with the SDK. Now what I mean by dev loop is I mean the gap between when I code and when I see those changes in the browser. The smaller that gap, the more productive I found I am. And it kind of goes like this. As long as it's very quick, I'm pretty productive. As soon as it starts to hit maybe 7 seconds, 10 seconds, start to just completely drop productivity. Why? These are my enemies. I hate and love these things. Facebook, not Facebook for me, but Reddit, Hacker News, whatever. I'm sure you have your own favorite sites. Those things that, okay, this shit's taking way too long. Alt-tab, go do something else. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, oh crap, I was doing something. And you go back and you spend like 10 minutes like trying to figure out what the heck's going on. It's a pain. So your development loop has to be fast if you want to be productive. And in fact, it gets worse. I was talking to someone, a support person, who said they couldn't replicate the issue that a support person was having on the local machine. So instead, they have to send code to the user, who then has to do some work. So 2 weeks later, they get back and say, no, that didn't work. She has to do something else. Talk about a horrible dev loop. Anyways, make sure your dev loop is fast. And how you do that is by focusing on the first part of this graph, or how I found it worked for me anyways. Make any kind of changes where you can do edit, reload. We heard Zach yesterday talking about how in the JavaScript world it is so fast. Do that. You can do that too. JavaScript isn't so bad. What I found that works out well in Speakeasy is to take all that presentation logic from the Java world and put it into JavaScript. So what that does is give me a lot of logic, a lot of my validation. All that stuff is happening in the client side where it's very fast. I can do very quick iterations. And then my server side simply becomes a set of REST services, which of course does validation too. Don't yell at me yet. Does a set says all the REST services to actually do the interactions. So that keeps your server side light and clean and lets you spend most of your time developing in an environment which is very, very, very fast. Now, if you can't do that, the second part of the graph is when you have to reload the plugin, whether you're using PI, whether you're using FastDev, whatever. This can be pretty fast. However, I've found that if your plugin gets large, let's say you're embedding a lot of libraries, or you have a lot of startup code, all of a sudden it starts to hit, for me anyways, the 10-second mark and the productivity goes down. So again, try to move stuff on the other side. Try to make it quick. This stuff, just avoid this at all costs. Anything that causes you to restart the app, because God bless them, I love our apps, but holy hell, those things are slow to start up. If you have to start up to see your change, it's just going to kill everything. So avoid anything in WebInflib. Avoid anything like Plugins 1 if you can. It's just going to slow you down. Speaking of Atlas Run, since I've been using this stuff a lot, there's a couple little tips that I put into the SDK that a lot of people perhaps don't know, and I thought I'd share those with you. First, did you know that AMPs can actually run multiple products at the same time? You can tell it to run your plugin in JIRA 4 and in JIRA 5 simultaneously. So you can make a change and then see that change in JIRA 4, JIRA 5, all at the same time. Very, very fast. You can also use this for different products. So you can tell AMPs to start up Confluence and start up JIRA, so you can do any type of testing between them. And in fact, it goes even further where you can write functional tests, which test with multiple products up at the same time. This is very useful if you're writing an integration plugin, which will have Confluence talk to JIRA or some such. Very, very useful capability. The second, and this is one of my favorite little features, is you've seen in some of these demos that the output of Maven is nicely colorized. That's because if you set an environment variable, maven underscore color to true, it will, if you're using OS X or Linux, it will insert ANSI colorization codes into the output so that so you can quickly see problems. For example, I'm always having this one test failure, and there's logs, just logs everywhere, and I can't see what's going on. But if I have Maven colorization turned on, I scroll up, see that little bit of red, know exactly what my problem is, can get back to coding. Very handy little tip. The reason why it doesn't work on Windows, by the way, is because they lack a decent terminal for some freaking reason. I don't know. So the lesson here is, think about when you've been doing development and how many times you Alt-Tab away, and try to minimize that. As developers, you would think that we always try to do better, but we really don't. We have these bad habits, these things that slow us down, but you're like, it's only going to take 10 seconds. I need to get back to my coding, and you never fix. It's amazing to me how much developers, and I include myself in this, have a tolerance for pain. Not tolerate that pain any longer. Find ways to make your development loop super fast. Strategy number 4, reuse UI with OWI. Now, we've already heard an OWI talk and went into a great detail Ben did on how to use OWI. It's awesome. The thing I wanted to highlight here is, again, if you're doing any front-end stuff, don't depend on the product code, the product JavaScript, the product CSS, because it's going to change. It always changes. They make no guarantees, even in bug fix releases, that'll stay the same. So try to use OWI whenever you can. Of my favorite things in OWI, I thought I'd share with you. You like my Photoshop job? I had fun with that. Actually, GIMP, it's not bad. A bit weird, though. A few of my favorite components, tab panels. Just a little bit of HTML in the right way. Insert, I think it actually does take one line of JavaScript to kick it off, and you're done. All that nice presentation layout, done for you for free. The second, messages. I use messages all the time. Now, I use them a slightly different way. So what I do is I put the drop shadow on them, which is, again, an option that OWI will take care of for you. And I have them in a fixed position so that no matter where you are on the screen, it shows up in the same place. And then after 5 seconds, I have it do a slow fade. So it kind of gives a nice little growl-type notifications effect. Very cool. Very many different ways you can use OWI messages. Dialogs. What's there to say? If you want to get user input, use a dialogue. It's great. I'm also using OWI forms. Again, just the right markup, and I get all this wonderful styling for free. So again, try the sandbox. The sandbox, you have a way to see what all the different components are, play with them, tweak their settings, see what's going to work out well for you. It'll save you a lot of time and make your thing from being, if you're anything like me, butt ugly because we have no design sense, to something that actually doesn't offend people. How's that for a, yes, I don't want to offend people, hooray. The final one, make feedback dead simple. So you spend all this time to make sure that you did the right plugin, you optimize your development loop, you're making it pretty, you're writing your functional test, of course, and you ship it. And you think, finally it's done, this is amazing. Let's be honest, your plugin is probably mediocre at best. The reason is, because again, you're doing it all with what you know. It's only once you get it out there in the real world and get feedback, that's how you take your plugin from mediocre to awesome. And so there's 2 things that matter here. 1, how much feedback you get from other users, and 2, quickly you're able to respond to that. So you need to make that gathering of feedback as simple as possible. The best example I have for this is, and I don't think this has been mentioned before, is Confluence has this get feedback button. This changed, well, I wouldn't say changed my life, that's probably a bit dramatic, but it certainly opened my eyes to how important feedback is. Here's the story. So Sharif, the product manager for Confluence, has this fancy new editor that we started to use internally, and he wants to get more and more feedback. Now, of course, Confluence has a JIRA project. You can always go to the JIRA project, open up a new tab, go to Jack, find the project in the list of projects. There's usually several that you're not really sure which. You just kind of pick one and hope that's the right one. Go in, create an issue. What is this, a bug? Is this an improvement? I don't know. And then you fill out all these different fields, 90% of which you have no idea what they do, but they seem to be important. So you just kind of make up something and go through, and then you're done. So that whole process, painful, takes minutes, which means that you'll never do it. And you'd think that if anyone is happy filling out JIRA issues, you'd think it would be Atlassians. No, turns out we don't like that stuff either. It's getting better in 5.0, so JIRA people don't hate me, but it's still painful. So Sharif said we can do better than that. So what he did is he created a speakeasy extension which put a button on every single page. You click that button, it opens up a dialog and says, what feedback do you have? You type something, you hit submit, you're done. You move on. Because he made it that easy, he went from maybe 1 or 2 bug issues that were filed every week. Last I heard, 8 pieces of feedback every single day, 7 days a week is what it averaged out to. So many orders of magnitude more feedback just by making it simple. So for your plugin, think of how you could do a similar thing. But feedback is not just a one-way street, grabbing information. It's also about how you respond to it. Matt Quayle talked about the JIRA, the Mobile Connect library. And one of my favorite features of this, which I think you mentioned, is when an automatic crash report comes in, you're able to type and actually have an interaction with the person who filed the issue. So you have that back and forth. Responding to feedback is such a crucial part of any plugin experience. Because if you spend all your time to write some feedback to somebody, you want to see that, oh, yeah, it's not a problem, or yeah, I'll fix that, whatever. By responding, you're making your users happier, your users feel appreciated, and they're more likely to tell their friends what a great plugin you're doing. And in fact, it can go farther than that. If you're able to respond to feedback quicker, especially for internal plugins, it makes you from that guy who does that plugin, which kind of works and is kind of annoying, to that hero who responds and fixes things that day, and soon is, they're your top. You want to make people happy. That's what plugin development is all about. So if you're wanting to do something like this in your plugin, as Matt mentioned as well, you have the JIRA Issue Connect. It allows you to very easily allow a user to type in some feedback, and it gets sent back to you. And again, you need to action that. But feedback isn't just simply that two-way street, which is good, user to developer. It can also be user to user. So one of the early features we put into Speakeasy, which has turned out to be great, was Mike's idea. He said, every time someone enables an extension, send the author an email that says, hey, someone enabled your extension. This is one of those little things that it's not anything you can action, it's not a to-do, but it's just kind of a nice little message to get. I love to be working and I get a little message. Someone enabled my extension, someone favorited my extension. It's just that little bit of feedback that makes me happier, makes me more satisfied, feeling like what I spent my time doing got appreciated. It makes me more likely to keep my extension up to date, and it makes me more likely to tell my friends to give it a go. So think of ways perhaps in your plugins where you could encourage people to give better feedback to each other to, again, build a better plugin. So the lesson for you, try JIRA Issues Connect. It's super simple. Just drop a little bit of JavaScript anywhere you want in your application, and now you have a really easy way for users to give feedback. So Thomas Edison, of course, did not end with the light bulb. End with the vote-telling machine. He went on to create the light bulb and the phonograph and over 1,000 other inventions, because he always believed that that he could do better. He could make something better. And that's what plugin development is about, making something better. So for those of you who have been developing plugins for a long time, how many have been developing plugins more than a year? A lot. How many of you haven't developed a plugin before? Okay, so we have some noobs, we have some old people, old-ish people, whatever. People have developed plugins before. Let's get better terminology. For those of you who've been developing for a while, two things I have to say to you. First, you can improve. You may, if you're anything like me, have all these bad habits that are slowing you down. Think of ways that you can aggressively work to improve your workflow. But the second part is share more with other people. We have this great resource, answers.atlassian.com, where you're able to respond to questions and to give feedback to help other people. And so for the new people out there, welcome to plugin development. I hope you have a good experience. But if you get frustrated and annoyed, because good Lord, you're going to be doing that the first day, most likely. No fault, of course, of the plugin system. It's probably a product thing. It's going to happen. But the chances are someone else has already hit that problem. So also try using answers.atlassian.com. Get that help you need. Plugin development can be a very rewarding thing, and it can help you really change how your company works and how you work. But before I go, I like to work on different side projects, something that improves the plugin ecosystem. And I was trying to think of what I'm going to be working on this next year. And I thought about the JRA Studio Problem. So for those of you who don't know, we have JRA Studio, which I believe has been talked about, which is all of our products up in a SaaS cloud environment. And that's where things are going more and more. More of our applications are going, more of our customers are becoming cloud-based customers. So plugins is awesome for behind-the-firewall instances, for those things that run on your machine or a hosted machine, dedicated machine somewhere. They're great. You can customize everything. Unfortunately, all that power is a very bad thing in a hosted environment, because that plugin that misbehaves normally could just bring down your instance, you put that up on hosted, and it brings down everybody. So we have to be very, very careful about what plugins we allow in hosted. And unfortunately, that process is getting worse because While it's great that we're moving to more continuous deployment, getting features out quicker, that also means we might be breaking plugins quicker for our hosted customers. So we have to be very, very cautious. So what do? We have you guys out there who love to write plugins and love to improve things, and we have a product who doesn't support plugins. So this is my project for 2012. Well, whatever's left of it. No, hasn't happened yet. 2011 and 12 is remote plugins. What if instead of running the plugin inside of the application, the plugin was actually running outside? So that what goes into JIRA Studio is simply a descriptor file that says, I want an issue link, I want a tab panel, but instead of having a class for your tab panel, it says, here is the URL to go retrieve the HTML to show in that tab panel. What this does is it makes it possible for us to have more plugins because there's a lot less risk. There's not code running inside of our products which could potentially screw everybody up. So this is kind of an idea that we've started to play with. We have some prototypes. It's very, very early days. If you're interested in this, let me know. Do you want to run your plugin in a hosted environment? Would you like to use this separation capacity for your custom instances where the uptime of JIRA is critically important and you don't want to risk that for a plugin, but you want to allow more and more plugins? And do you want to be part of an early access program? Well, I shouldn't say program. If you want to, email me. If you want to be part of this project, help define the parameters, let me know. Because this is something, again, early days, but I'm hoping that in a year's time, when I stand before you and tell you about the amazing things that happened this year, I hope we're all talking about how awesome the plugin system is even more, and how you can now finally write plugins for Studio, and the world is a better place. Thank you.